if there are any other folks who wanted to ask questions about the AK CARES Act now. Kristin, I'm not sure if the folks that were going to speak on the panel have joined the call yet. So,
okay, that's great. I mean, it's great. We're getting a lot of questions in the chat bar, which is terrific. I'm glad people are using that, and I will be saving that. But yeah, if folks have questions for any of the folks who have spoken already, or other topics, other aspects of these programs that we haven't covered yet, by all means, let's hear them.
Yeah, this is Anisha. I have a question about the application process, I guess. So we submitted our application on June 11th. Unbeknownst to us, we'd received $1,000 from the EIDL, which deemed us ineligible. However, our application hasn't even been looked at yet 7 weeks later, so it hasn't been kicked back. My question is, these changes have already been approved by the legislature and they're just waiting to be approved further. Why, instead of denying these applications, which are taking weeks, if not months, to be processed, can they be set aside? And when those changes are made and adopted in the next couple of weeks, those applications be processed in the order then that they were set aside, rather than being denied, kicked back, and having to wait for potentially more months. I mean, this funding is detrimental to keeping our business afloat.
Yeah, if you haven't heard from credit union, have they told you that your application was denied?
No, I haven't heard anything from them. I emailed them today, and they are still working on June 4th's applications.
Right. So you're still in line and you won't lose your place.
I won't right now, but if they happen to pick mine up in the next maybe week or two, which is probably not likely, but you know, we would be deemed ineligible based on the criteria right now, because those changes haven't been adopted with the credit union.
They haven't been adopted, but they know they're coming, and so maybe Sandra has a comment about that.
So yeah, if you didn't get a denial, you are still in the queue. And did I understand you correctly that you submitted your application and then later got the Eidl funds? Is that correct?
No, we got those early in March, $1,000.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll have to check and see. I think what you're proposing makes sense. I think that's one of the things that we're trying to sort out, is how many of those might be there and how we can deal with them. But the intent is, if you got $1,000, I understand folks were getting them when they didn't even know they're going to. It's like they
yeah, magic money.
That's caused, and there's a number of folks that have done that are in that situation. So we do know that's out there, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because I'll make sure we somehow address that and get that answered, because you shouldn't have to reapply because of that, since we're changing it. But I know at this point, you know, without it being in effect, people are saying, well, you know, that's the rules today. But I've heard from a number of folks that about having to reapply for a small amount that would be eligible once this package is approved and effective. So I will take that down and see if I can get a little more clarity on that.
Thank you. And on a side note, you and Robert were my idols playing basketball in Unalaska. So hi.
Oh no, who is this? This is Anisha?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, my past has caught up with me. That's thank you, I guess.
I had a question or comment. This is Greg.
Hi, Greg. Go ahead.
Hi. I applied for the Alaska CARES Act grant on June 5th, and I've had 2 replies. One, I requested $100,000, and then I had $104,000 worth of expenses, and I kind of over cushed it just to make sure I had enough, and that was rejected because I didn't match the numbers up. My request didn't add up to my expenses, so they kicked me out. And it was about 3 weeks later, and I just heard back today that I was declined because I didn't have a current business license. And my business has had a current license since 1992. And every time you call, you can never talk to Credit Union 1. You never get to talk to your loan officer or anybody. So if there's a minor issue with your application, you just get kicked out and you get back in line and wait till you hear from them again. When you do call, you get state loan officers that try to answer the questions the best they can. So and they only have 5% of this money out. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's a total failure for a program. And if they could just bring up your application and get these small little bugs worked out, they could process more loans. But when they keep kicking you back and putting you to back of the line, it's extremely frustrating for business owners to try to get anywhere. It's just a disaster program. I can't tell it any different. And I've had 2 loans in with the state, SBA state loan and a rural development loan. And whenever I call in about my CARES Act, I happen to get my officer that I've been trying to get these other loans through, and they've been in the works for 4 months. And my loan officer said, no problem, these will get approved without any problem whatsoever. That was 3.5 months ago. So they're not only derelict in their working with the customers that are trying to apply, get money out to, they're sucking the state loan officers away from what they're trying to do for the businesses too. So I don't know. I don't have anything good to say about the program. I'm sorry. But what I can say is really try to check every single box and try to fill out the application to the best of your ability. They do have a video out finally. They sent me to show you that all the numbers have to match up. And when they ask for payoff amounts on your loans that you have, it doesn't mean the balance due on the loan. It just means what you have due currently. So just pay real close attention. And it's really frustrating if you can't talk to the loan officer that you are, you would hope you were working with. But to say I don't have a current business license, and I sent them in my current status, this good status. I copied everything off from the state website. So they're in error. And I can't talk to anyone about it. So I just get to wait a few more weeks or months to hear back from, I guess. I don't know. It's very frustrating. Thanks.
Sorry to hear that, Greg. One of the things that we're hoping to do is, we got that training today from Credit Union One. And so the things that you had to learn the hard way, Lori and I and Kristin and Chelsea and some of these other people that are part of this group that's putting on this thing, we've been trained on it now, and so we can help walk you through those processes, and those videos and tools are available now. So hopefully some of these problems will get mitigated, and maybe Sandra wants to speak more about the new processes that they're trying to institute that are going to, from what I understand, part of the reason that this new application with updated eligibility hasn't dropped yet is because they're trying to streamline some of these application processes. So supposedly it's going to get easier, and we're here to help as well. So I hope that if any of you are considering applying for this grant, that you do, and that you reach out to us and let us help you too.
The one thing these fishermen are going to have a problem with, if they haven't renewed their fishing license until right at the beginning of the season, if you didn't have a current fishing license on March, 11th or whatever, they're going to deny you this application. So just fair warning.
I think during the last meeting that I attended on Zoom, I brought up that question because this is Anisha, we didn't have our actual state's business license renewed until May. And I was told that if the business was in existence the following year, applicants would still be eligible, regardless if they didn't receive their license, i.e. permit card, until, you get ready to go fishing, because that's usually when we get our cards. So I was told something different, and I hope and that was with strictly just the business license. I'm hoping it'll be the same for the permit holders.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and this is Sandra. I did write that down to confirm that question. March 11th is the date that we're using for the eligibility, but I will check both the business and the what that requirement is, and if it is being rejected for fishing licenses as well as businesses.
And Sandra, do you know if there has been anyone who has successfully returned their PPP loan in order to receive an AK Cares grant?
I believe there has been. Jon Bittner is the person that's been tracking a lot of that, but I think there has been. I can't quote who it might be, but I believe there has been. And I don't think it's very clean either, of course. But Jon would be a good resource for that.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. So Shelley asked that question. So Shelley, there is an email address farther up in the chat for Jon Bittner that you can maybe reach out to him about that. Is Heather Burton? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just kind of piggybacking on both some of what Anisha and Greg has said, is I received the PPP loan before CARES was available. CARES is much broader, is a much bigger grant. And so I've been this whole time in consideration. I filled out an application on June 11th, which hasn't been bumped out yet. But similar to what Anisha is saying, like if I return the funding I already received, will I go to the back of the line and potentially lose all funding, or would I keep my place if I got it done before they looked at it? And then secondly, like Greg has found, when you call, you can't necessarily talk to anyone who is well trained and knows the answers to these questions, and so that's made it difficult to know. It's a game, feels like a gamble without a lot of direction.
So Shelley, have you tried to call Alaska CARES Act Credit Union 1 folks and not heard back?
I just they aren't able to advise on it or to give any information.
Well, they can't. I mean, that's true. They can't tell you like the likelihood that you'll get approved is X. I mean, what they are saying, what we heard today was, of the 104 million in applications that they've received, they figure 50% of them are going to be ineligible. We know that 180 million hasn't even is still available to be requested. And so, yeah, so they did. I mean, we talked about that this morning, Sandra, with the group, and people said it's a judgment call that a business owner has to make. But I mean, all signs point to that there is still plenty of money available, and if you already qualified for PPP, it seems like you would.
Money for 100,000 followers.
Yeah, that you would still qualify for CARES Act money. And I don't know if other people tried to call Credit Union 1 and not been able to, but I called last week to try to, with a question about how to fill out the application, because somebody else had asked me, and I was on hold for 30 minutes, but then I called and left my name and number, and someone called me back at 5:30 that day. So that was my experience.
And I guess I just haven't reached anybody who's been knowledgeable as far as being able to like answer specific questions.
Okay. Okay, well, that I will convey to their staff and try to see if we can't connect you with somebody who can help.
Yeah, and maybe like just what Anisha is saying, it would be great to know if you would, if I'd be holding my place in line, or I'd be starting at the very end of the line.
I think you would hold your place in line.
Okay. Great. Well, I'll send a message.
We'll double check
and see if I can get any more info. Thank you.
Thank you for that input. I'm wondering if Heather Burton is on the line.
Hey there, it's Heather. Can you hear me?
I can. Okay, you're this mysterious phone number. Okay. So Heather, I wanted you to have a minute to speak. We're going to wrap up the call here pretty soon, but from a fishing perspective and applying for some of these grants, if you had a couple things that you just wanted to share with the group to say, if you're going to apply, here's, a couple things to know, or here's something I wish I knew, or here's, a couple things to make sure that you do or remember, that you might want an opportunity to share that.
Yeah, I would say we actually went through the application process on both the PPP loan through the SBA and also Alaska CARES. And James kind of took care of the PPP because it was before he really took off to go fishing, and I finished it up because he was gone. That, by comparison, was extremely simple compared to the Alaska CARES. Though I did muddle through that, and after I'd figured it out, there wasn't a lot to it. But with the PPP process, the reason it was so easy is you actually have a loan officer that you contact. And I know not every bank is participating with SBA loans, but if you deal with one that is, then you can call in and you have a loan officer assigned to you. And then they kind of walk you through the whole process. So we really didn't have to provide a whole lot. We had to provide our Form 941 and our Schedule C from last year's taxes and fill out a 2-page application. And then from there, they came back and asked a few clarifying questions. It was super fast. Honestly, the most time-consuming part was getting approval for me to sign as power of attorney. So there really wasn't much to it. I did apply for the Alaska Cares, not knowing if we were going to get approved for the PPP. And of course, they had, the deadline on the PPP. And I thought, well, I got to get my application in on the CARES program. And that ended up being a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Granted, the process is terrible because, they're inundated and they don't have the resources to get through them quickly. So everybody's just waiting. But I don't know if anybody would want to contact me offline. I'd be happy to, kind of give my account of how I did that. Of course, I didn't get funding from that. And at this point, it's one or the other, unless I guess maybe there's going to be that caveat if it's under 5,000. But yeah, the PPP process was really smooth. We used FNBA, and we actually went through a loan officer in Anchorage because Cully was out the day that James had called and tried to get some information. And I think her name was Lydia, and she's at the corporate lending office. And like I said, kind of a non-event. They just handled everything. We submitted our signatures electronically, and they mailed us a cashier's check. So there really wasn't much to it. So I don't know if anybody has questions for me, but I would say it was really simple, and I expected it to be a lot harder than it really was.
That's great input, Heather. If anybody has questions for, a business from a business point of view with applying for these programs, and specifically a fishing business, Heather would be a good person to ask. Speak up if you want to ask on the call. We do have a question in the chat box from Heather Brannon. Can a 501c4 receive CARES Act funding? And Sandra, I believe the answer to that is not until these changes go through with the application. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. That is one of the changes we're going to implement. So
Heather Brannon, the legislature has approved these changes to allow 501c6s and 501c4s and businesses that have received up to $5,000 in funding from the PPP or EIDL to apply. But the new application that we would need to fill out in order to apply has not been released yet. And that's going to be released through, if I understand it correctly, DCCED, and then through Credit Union 1, or maybe through another entity, or DCRA, have you. Is that right, Sandra?
Well, the changes have not been approved by the legislature, just to be clear, and that was part of the lawsuit. The lawsuit that was, we got the opportunity to, but the commissioner has announced that it would be eligible. So those are the changes that we're trying to implement. Again, once we cross our T's and all that to get it, it is, again, a high priority to try to get those out. We understand that there's businesses all over the state that are waiting for something different. We've heard a lot about some of the concerns like you've mentioned here, and really trying to address that. And I think with our new portal and looking at it through the department, I think we'll have a little better success in the weeks to come.
In the week to come, that's great to hear. I'll give you my personal experience. The Cordova Chamber of Commerce is a 501c6, and C6s have not been eligible for hardly any funding. And we were eligible for the economic injury disaster loan, and so we were sent in, we were approved for that, but we have a window of 60 days to respond and say if we were going to receive that money, and we can't respond to that until we get a chance to apply for this AK Cares grant, and that window closes for us on August 10th. So I'm sure hope that the AK Cares grant application goes live before then. And I think we're not the only ones in this sort of position. So yeah, I hope that goes through. And the other thing I was gonna say is I thought that there was the lawsuit and that the judge denied the injunction. So basically shut down that lawsuit. And then I thought,
Not able.
talking,
Go ahead. Sorry.
I've been talking to our state legislators, their staff for Senator Gary Stevens and Representative Louise Stutes, and they've both told me that it does not require any legislative action at this point. It's just a matter of getting the new information sent out. So maybe there's some I don't know if that's something that maybe it would be good to clarify with those legislative staff members or your contacts, or maybe I'm understanding something incorrectly, but.
Yeah, on the lawsuit, it still is out there, and I'm not really the right person to ask on what the status is of that. But the proposed changes are approved and can be, once we get the back end and looking through all the pieces to get available to be
9,000.
public and our portal up, then we are good to go and start receiving applications through that portal.
Great. The other person that was going to maybe share some experience about applying for these grants was Linnea Ronegard, and I'm wondering if she's on the line. I don't see her on the line, so she may not be here, but I guess that is most of what we had planned to discuss tonight. And if we have any more questions for Sandra or anybody else, now would be a good time to pose those.
Hi, this is Alyssa. So I jumped on the call late. Sorry if this was already discussed. So I just put in my application yesterday, and then received an email from you, Kristin, about the expenses having to go to the vendor, which so for my business, I have to have a lot of money up front to revamp my business in order to offer classes, which I don't have the money to make these, to put it up front. So in my application, I just put all the links to where I would purchase these things, but there was no place in the actual application to do that. So I attached a separate PDF of that. I'm just wondering, I guess I'm not hearing very good things. I might now, I don't know, maybe get kicked out because of that. I don't understand how the state can just like make a purchase on Amazon and mail it to me. How is that happening? When you have to purchase equipment in order for your company to continue on, but you don't have the money, that's why you're applying for the CARES Act. So
yeah, that's what I was told they would do, Alyssa, was that they have this process they called controlled disbursement. So they might be shifting that. I mean, that might be part of the changes coming up, I think, where instead of expenses that are, say, anything under 25,000, they'll send the money to the applicant. But if if somebody's buying a really big piece of equipment that's over 25,000, they will send the check straight to the vendor. But so in your case, it might change by the time they get to your application. And that also brings up a point that was made to us this afternoon that I want to start making sure people hear. They were saying that there will be a time when, how did somebody put it? You know, when Congress sort of pulls itself together and is looking back on this in a year or two, there might be some audits, you know, that everybody should be keeping records about expenditures that you know, the money that you receive and how you spend it. So be sure to keep records on all of this. You know, I know some people it's going to be a shoebox or a Ziploc bag, but do save receipts and do save records and try to keep track of what is coming in and where it's coming from and what's going out and where it's being spent, so that you'll be able to provide those records if you're asked for them in terms of verifying how you spent the money you requested. So
Yeah, that's a good point, Kristin. And just along with that point, when we were talking to Credit Union One today, they made it clear that they are reviewing the eligible expenses that people are entering there, and they are trying to make sure that they fit the categories, you know, either being payroll or utilities or reopening costs or costs to stay open. So if you put something in there that doesn't fit those categories and it slips through the cracks and you get money for it, then that might come back to bite you when they do the audit years in the future. So trying your best to make sure that the items that you put in there fit the qualifications is going to benefit you as well. And they are trying to catch those things on the front end and say, oh no, this doesn't qualify, and leave that part out. And they said that when they do that, that they contact you and say, hey, we need a, you know, a better receipt for this, or we need an invoice, or, you know, this is incorrect, and that people should be getting emails or phone calls that say that, so that you can follow up and quickly keep your application moving forward. But sometimes people aren't seeing the emails, or they're ending up in your spam, or maybe it's an unknown number, so you don't answer it, and then you don't check your voicemail. Certainly, those are all things that we can be doing on our end as businesses to make sure we are checking all of our mail filters, and make sure we are, you know, checking our voicemails and trying to follow up with all of these, you know, due diligence, so that these applications don't get stuck in that incomplete pile and not actually followed through with. Is there anybody else who had a question or comment?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, I guess I heard you say that if you receive $5,000 or less of EIDL funds, you're now eligible for, and I'm not sure if it was the Alaska CARES Act or PPP grant or both.
It is the Alaska CARES Act. And so if you've received $5,000 or less in PPP or EIDL, you're now eligible for the AK CARES grant. And but as I understand it, you will have to, you will want to apply with that new application that is going to be coming out here shortly. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sandra.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Cathy, it's Robert Beadle.
Hi, Robert.
I received the PPP grant, and I didn't know there was a where you could go back in and relook at it. There were some things that were, just so it would go smoother, were not included. And then, of course, as we talked about with our buddies and stuff, they told me that things were, you know. So, and of course, it ended up being over $5 grand, so that eliminates me from. Is there any chance of an extension period on the PPP? How do I say it? PPP.
PPP. So the PPP grant is, you know, the application deadline for that is August 8th. And we asked if there was a decent possibility of that getting extended. And, you know, there's no saying for sure, but I don't think that that's, you know, something that's really being talked about right now. You could contact Jon Bittner and ask him that question about, you know, whether or not you can reapply again. But I think if you wanted to get the AK Cares grant, then if you had $5,000 or more, then you'd need to go through the process of returning that money to the PPP and then applying for the AK Cares grant. Does that kind of answer your question, or did I misunderstand you?
No, that's great. I can give John, I can get a maybe better understanding of what I need to do. So thanks for that. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else want to ask a question before we wrap up? Yes, Alyssa, there is a new AK Cares grant application coming out. It's going to be one that allows certain nonprofits that were ineligible before, like C4s and C6s, to apply, and it will allow people who have received up to $5,000 in PPP or EIDL to apply. How do you know what the payback portion of the EIDL is? Okay, so if you received an economic injury disaster loan in the amount of $7,000, in order to be able to apply for the AK Cares grant, you need to return $1,000 of that. So you need to have not received more than $5,000. So if you receive more than $5,000, you need to return anything that is over that $5,000 mark. So you could keep the first $5,000 of what you were granted through the EIDL, Mike. Well, if no one else has questions, then I'll let Kristin wrap it up here.
Sure. Well, thanks everybody. That was great. And again, we are seeing this as kind of the beginning of reaching out to folks and trying to provide assistance. So by all means, you can call the chamber and speak directly to Lori, and Cathy obviously will probably be available too. And also CDFU is going to be adding a new staff person to help people with filling out applications, answer questions about how to interpret the application guidelines. And so, yeah, if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to contact us again. And we'll be putting together some other business workshops and webinars going forward in the next few months. So you will be hearing from us again. So thank you so much, Deputy Commissioner Moller. That was great. I thank Jon Bittner in absentia, even though he's not here, and to the other folks, Heather, for talking about your experience. And we hope we can help you going forward.
Great. So on the Cordova Chamber website, which is cordovachamber.com, we will go ahead and post the portion of tonight's meeting that was able to be recorded, and the slideshows that were shown tonight, so that folks can go ahead and reference those if they need to. And if someone wants to reach Lori Davis at the Cordova Chamber to get, personalized business support in Cordova, her email is support@cordovachamber.com. If you want to receive support as a fishing business, as a permit holder, then there is going to be a specialist in that position with CDFU as well. And so you can reach him at support at, what is it, Chelsea? Support at cdfu.org?
cdfu.org, yeah.
Okay, so.
Sorry, I'll type it in the chat bar. It's support@cdfu.org.
I just added it in there, Chelsea. So, and then if you're in Valdez, you can contact Martha and Sharon. I don't know if you are going to be working with businesses as well, but Martha and Sharon, if you do want folks to have your contact info, you can go ahead and share it in the chat down there as well. And I can go ahead and save this chat as well, so that we can put that on the Cordova Chamber website as well. Okay, I guess that is it. You can, if you want to save the chat for yourself, I think you can go ahead and click on the 3 little dots down there in the chat and click Save Chat. I think that's an option for folks. Otherwise, we'll try to get this up on the Chamber website as soon as we can so that folks can reference it. And thanks again for everyone that is tuning in. And we are going to continue to do events like this, so we hope that you'll continue to stay involved.
Thanks, Cathy.
All right, thanks everyone. I'm gonna leave this meeting going for just a minute in case anybody wants to save the chat or copy paste anything from the chat, and then I'll go ahead and end the meeting, and feel free to sign off if you're ready to go. Looks like most people are signing off. Union 1. So I will go ahead and end the session. And again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Cathy.
That.